Podcast with Dan. Let's just get that. Did I clap?
Take one.
Yeah.
Yeah, clap.
It's a good start.
Nearly leave that in.
It's a good too. We just finish it. See you for episode 2.
Dan Glynn.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good.
So
Good.
here today we have Dan Glynn from Dan Glynn Coaching. I met you back at the start of the year. Close to the start of the year anyway.
Yeah.
We reached out because myself and Cormac seen what you were doing, opening the health and wellness centre in Navan. And I remember Cormac turning around and saying, have you seen what that Dan Glynn fella is doing? Because it was very similar to the vision we had for our own Wolf Academy building in the future.
Yeah.
And with the approach that you're taking, the mind, body, soul approach. And as Cormac actually said at the time, he goes, there's no point in us competing with him. Like, why don't we reach out and see what he's doing and that kind of stuff. So that's what we did. That's where the relationship started.
Yeah.
I have helped you out teaching some classes in there, and I love the approach you take with the full-on fitness part of it, but then also incorporating the mind, spirit, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
part at the end of the classes.
Yeah.
I've totally enjoyed teaching them that way as well.
Good.
And like from the feedback from the clients, they love it too. So what was it? You're obviously involved in the fitness industry for a long time.
Yeah.
What was it that got you involved in that in the first place?
It's a good question. In fitness or in the work that I'm doing now?
Well, I suppose what got you involved in the fitness industry and helping people out in that way first, and then what led into the way where you are
It's a
now?
great question. So I suppose for me, where kind of all began, I first went to college in Tralee. So when I went into college in Tralee, I remember being in school, and it's a lot of probably the work that you do now, being in school. And when I was in school, I was never really someone who was really smart or clever, or that's the belief I held about myself anyway. And a lot of that came from when I was in school, I was exempt from Irish, so I didn't have to do Irish. So then, suddenly now, when all the other people were going into Irish class, Dan was going into do something else. And then I never really knew or understood, and that led me to create a lot of beliefs saying, well, do you know what, I'm not really smart, I'm not really good at school, I'm not good enough at school. Come back to that belief sometimes we hold. And I suppose I went through the years in school and had this on a subconscious level in the background. And then when it came to the Leaving Cert and it came to sitting down with a career guidance counsellor, I was nervous as hell. Because I still remember to this day standing in the hall before I went into her, and I was thinking, what the hell am I going to say? What the hell is, more importantly, she going to say? So what could I do? So where could I go? So I couldn't be able to go to college. I won't be able to get by. And I remember walking into the room, she sat me down and said, what are you looking to do, Dan? I was like, look, I'm going to be fully honest with you here. I haven't a clue. I don't know what I'll be able to do. I'm not smart at school. I haven't a clue. And straight away, it's still a great question she asked me. It doesn't matter what you want to do. What matters is what would you love to do. And soon as she said that, I was like, she's never thought about that. I just thought you had to get into a comfortable, safe, familiar job, get into something that you could get a paycheck by. And I said, well, the only thing I actually really love, and I think I'm actually really good at, is anything around sport or health or fitness. And that led me to go to Tralee to study health and leisure. So when I was down there, I remember before going down, I was like, right, I'm going to do PE teaching because it's safe, it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's a guaranteed paycheck, it's a pension, and all these different things. And when I was in there, I suppose my own energy started to shift and started to change. I really started to get into health and fitness and looking at all these areas from nutrition, from sports science, and all these other areas. And then I suppose I went down that path and starting a personal training business and really focus on physical health and physical fitness. So I suppose when I started a business, that was the main priority. Physically getting people stronger, physically getting people healthier, and physically getting people to a condition that society puts these days that's healthy, that's well. And I suppose for me, I got to that point myself personally. So back in the day, I was someone who would push themselves all the time. I'd track everything to the T. I'd always make sure I had everything right. I'd always make sure I had everything perfect from a physical health standpoint. And I got to a condition where I remember when starting that journey that I said, right, when I get to this condition, which is the worst thing we can say, I'll be happy, I'll be content, everything will fall into place. I got down to a position where I was about probably 7 or 8% body fat, which a lot of professional athletes could be in around that, maybe a little bit higher. And physically, in that moment, I was in the greatest condition in my life. Mentally, I was in the worst condition in my entire life. I hated myself. I hated the way I seen the person in the mirror. And it's amazing, I only did a workshop 2 weeks ago. And before I went on to the workshop, I had that photo and I said, will I put this up? Won't I put this up? And there was still so much of me that struggled to do it. But I was like, right, this is my message. This is what I believe in. So I put up the photo of me back at that 7-8% body fat, and everyone on the workshop saying, Jesus, you look great, you look at this, you look at that. And then I went to the next photo and I zoomed in my eyes and I said, what do you see now? And then people said tired, exhausted, stressed, worried, fearful. And that's what everyone's seen in their eyes. So I suppose, I know I'm rabbit-baiting this answer, but I suppose that's what's led me to the work that I do nowadays. It's really, as I like to call it, getting beyond the physical. I believe so much of life is focused on physical things, physical stuff we put into our life, and we keep filling it with more and more stuff, and we become more and more empty. And I think when we can get actually into our eyes, which is the seat of the soul, that's where the magic really starts to happen. That's where a lot of the time we spend chasing our lives to get to this place or get to this position, we realise we actually already have it and we actually don't need the stuff. But I suppose the work that I do now is giving people a space and a place to look beyond what is it for them that actually can allow them to be fully content, fully at peace, fully with joy in themselves, number one, and in all areas of their life. So I hope that answers your question.
Here we can just end it now. Yeah. Figured out life.
Yeah. There we go. Boom.
It's actually really interesting to listen to that, because I felt many similarities almost in my own journey. Because when I was it was a bit different. When I was in school, I was actually like quite focused on my studies and focused on like business and maths. I was really good at those subjects, and I did quite well in school, but I was following what I thought I should do, instead of what if your guidance counsellor said to you, follow what do you love, what would you love to do. I kind of wish I had that advice back then, because I was kind of doing what I thought I should do, and now that led me down the path of doing IT and hating that, and ended up quitting and then going on another journey over a couple of years to discover what do I actually love and what brings me alive, what do I want to give to the world. But it's funny now, because my message is similar to the message you got. When I go into schools now to talk to young people, I say, like, discover what you love, or like, if it's a cause, like what's your purpose. It's usually linked to like what makes you angry or what you want to change in the world, or connecting with yourself. Everything you said there it's kind of reminded me of what I'm trying to share with young people today. So it was just amazing how like that one thing that guidance counsellor said to you had such a shift in your perspective.
And that's it, it's such a shift, and I'm actually really grateful. I'm very lucky to have had that person there, because it could have went on a completely different path in a different way, and where I am now could have taken 10 years longer. And a lot of people say to me, what age are you, Dan? I say, I'm only 25. I'm like, Jesus, you're only 25.
You're only 25.
There you go, you're only 25.
Fuck, I didn't know that.
And a lot of people get shocked, but I suppose
you're Sean's age, isn't it?
And that's I suppose, and I never look at like, oh God, I'm 25 of wisdom. It's not that at all, like. But I think sometimes in life you can be lucky enough to meet people or to have people in your life that just make you ask bigger and better questions. And it's funny when you look at a leaving cert, they'll ask you Pythagoras theorem, they'll ask you about Oxbow Lakes, they'll ask you about the chemistry balance, but they never ask the most important question: do you not know who you are?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
And I think that's the greatest question that so many of us struggle to know and struggle to understand, is who we actually are. And some of us do know who we are, but we put more stuff in our life to drown it out and to put it out because of fear. Fear of what will someone say, fear of what if I look different, fear of what people think I'm not enough. We get caught up into so much things. I think that's why so many people nowadays, if you look at the world that we live in, we should be the healthiest, the happiest, and most content we ever should. We've more than we've ever had. People hundreds of years ago didn't even have central heating. People hundreds of years ago couldn't go 2 minutes down the road to the shop to get whatever they wanted for a movie night. 100 years ago didn't even have a TV. We've all so much stuff in life right now, and yet we have so little at the same time. And I think a lot of that comes back that people just aren't living authentically in who they actually are, what actually brings them alive, and fear is the biggest infection towards that holds us back from that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's people are not connected to themselves and living authentically. Because I spent most of my life like that. You know, trying to, like you said, drown out who I actually was, doing things that were against my morals and my values.
Yeah.
Just being someone else completely. And by connecting back to myself, I'm experiencing feelings that I didn't even know existed. Levels of happiness and joy. Now, it still comes with all the other stuff, but I can sit with that and deal with that.
Yeah.
But the levels of happiness and joy I'm feeling are things I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And that was from reconnecting back to myself and actually living authentically. And I'm still learning how to do that. Do you know what I mean? I don't think there's an end to that, because
I think it's a lifelong journey.
With your mind, you're always going to have to just keep healing, keep growing, keep communicating with people, and just keep in that loop.
Yeah.
Do you know?
100%.
And for me anyway, that's a happy life for me.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you was, that moment when that photo was taken.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that people could see the exhaustion, all that in your eyes.
Yeah.
Was there some time, I'm presuming around that time, where you decided this isn't what I want? And
I suppose, yeah.
Like what brought you back to yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I suppose there's lots of different moments. I suppose if it was really summing up in 2 moments, I think the first one would be really from trauma. And a couple of years ago, one of my best friends, who would have been really close, there would have been 4 of us just in the one group, and we're basically like a little family. We lost him on Christmas Eve, and he was only 23 years old. And that was a massive, like anyone who experienced trauma or grief, you go through all emotions, and often at times you can put more stuff into your life to make you busier so you don't have to face it. I think for me back then, I put more energy into work, put more energy into pushing myself harder. And there's a line that I use now that I see often with a lot of clients is trauma in motion. We create more suffering, we create more harder things, pushing ourselves harder, and we see it all the time now. People doing these 100-mile runs, people doing these insane, crazy challenges. Sometimes it is from a really good place, but when it becomes a need that you constantly need to be doing, better questions that ask, what are you outrunning? And I think for me back then, I was really outrunning, not wanting to go there, to listen to it, and most importantly to heal it. And it got to a point that there's a great line, if you look at the word disease, it's in it, dis-ease. And I think for so long I lived with that dis-ease in my life, in my lifestyle, making myself busier, working longer hours, pushing myself harder, filling more things into my life, and it led me then to a hospital bed. So one day I was teaching a class as normal on any Saturday morning, and there was particularly a lot going on at that moment. And I woke up, I still remember that morning waking up with massive black bags underneath my eyes. But of course I said, oh no, I'll have to keep going, just push on, go harder. So I went straight into work anyway and taught a class. When in 10 minutes I was dropped onto the floor, and I thought it was a heart attack. And of course I dropped onto the floor. Luckily enough, my dad was actually in the class at the time, and lucky enough there was a nurse in the class all the time. So I don't remember any of this at all now. She said get him straight into hospital. So I was rushing into hospital, and I was starting to wake up a little bit now, and I was convinced it was a heart attack. It felt like a stabbing pain into my heart, just boom, boom, boom. If I took the smallest inhale in, it was even harder. And I got into the hospital anyway, and turned out I had a collapsed lung. And lucky enough I went in straight away, because they said if any hour or two later I could have suffered brain damage from not enough oxygen. So when I was in hospital, when you're in them moments, and when you're in there, my ultimate belief is that now especially is that everything happens for a reason, as hard as that can be to see at times. And when I was in the hospital there, your face to sit with yourself, your face just to be there. And I suppose when I was in there, a month before this happened, I started working with my first, if you want to call it, a spiritual coach, whatever the hell you want to call it. I suppose I started working with my first one of them. And in Chinese medicine, the main parts of, they say if you have experienced trauma or if you experienced grief in your life, that can be connected to certain body areas. In Chinese medicine, the main area for grief and trauma is the heart and the lungs. And yet a month later, after I finally went to experience this area, I got a collapsed lung. So when I was in the hospital then, that was the real moment that I think we all get it. There can be moments where everything looks like it's chaos. Everything looks like it's breaking down. But then there can be this breakthrough and awakening moment. And I think that was the moment for me that I could leave that hospital bed. And lucky enough, I got the chance to get another chance. And a lot of people don't get that second chance. When I was in there, I had the chance. And I wasn't going to waste it. I said, look at this, Dan. You've been sent by someone from somewhere, sent it to this you as a message. So what are you going to do with it? Do you want to go back to your old ways, pushing yourself harder, making yourself more stressed out, filling more stuff into your life? Do you want to go back to that old way and that old life and be in this hospital bed in another year, or in a coffin in another 2 or 3? Or do you want to take the lesson and live it forward? And I suppose that was the real moment back then where everything changed. I started to look at, well, what is it to be actually healthy? What is it to be actually successful? What is it to actually live a good life? And these were questions and areas I started to explore, and looking from different philosophies, looking at different parts of mindfulness, looking at all these other areas, and that's what's really led me on the path and the road in terms of what I'm in, and that's why, as I say to every single person that I work with, is that every mess has a message. So no matter what mess you're in, there's always a message in there. But it's up to you to find it. It's up for you to search for it. And most importantly, it's up for you to live it. And I suppose now that's a lot of the work that I try to do, number one, in my own life, and number two, in the people that I work with, to see beyond the physical. Because I think now in society we've been shaped so much with fitness, with nutrition, with sleep, with all these physical areas, which is an important part of our lifestyle, absolutely. I'm not saying that for one moment. But I think people get so caught up into just looking at that. How many people go into a gym, train, exercise, and use that, their motivation is coming from a place of pain or suffering. I have to go harder. I have to push myself harder. Every session has to be tough. Every session has to be hard. How many people eat food and put all this pressure on themselves that they have to always have it right and have to always have it perfect? Sometimes we're doing physical things that keep us healthy, that keep us well. But whether that's coming from a healthy place is a bigger, better question to ask. And I think for me, going back then to them years before, that's probably a lot of what it was, coming from a place of non-self-compassion. And when we can really start to create that inner world first, everything else outside that starts to change. So that's pretty much it.
Fuck me, that was some answer. Can't remember the question.
Good night.
I was doing a lot, like reflecting as you were talking. I was again, I suppose, naturally reflecting back to my own life and what I've learned, and just listen to what you've learned on your journey, and some of the messages you've got are very, like, in your face, powerful. Like, you know, a collapsed lung is quite a serious thing. And I'm not sure if I had, obviously we all get our own messages from our own messes, but one thing I did think about there when you were talking was just that part about, you can be doing all the healthy things and, you know, living, going by what they say, like, you know, sleeping right, eating right, meditating, journaling, and even myself and Darryl and yourself, like, we know a lot of this stuff from working in this area. And I only came to you there, what was it, last week, Friday, and I think it was only the second time I met you. And I just said to you, we just sat down for a minute in your studio, and then I just said to you, I don't know why, I just felt I could just say whatever I wanted to. I just said, I don't know what's going on at the minute, but I'm doing all the right things. And my mind is just...
I only asked you to drop the keys in.
Yeah, I was only dropping in keys, but
you weren't dropping in just keys.
No, keys to my soul. And I just was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, my life is perfect in terms of, like, what I've visualized that I wanted this life. Say if I went 3 years ago and someone said to me 3 years ago, you'd have this life, this is what it would look like, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, that's unbelievable. And then, but part of me is like doing all this stuff, and like, I have this amazing life, and I'm like, what's wrong? Like, why am I still having these dark thoughts, or why am I feeling there's something missing? And it's just to, I don't know, remind people that it's like you can be doing all these things, and even us, as we do these, and teach them to other people, but it doesn't mean we're absolved from the reality of, like, sometimes you're not okay, and you just need to, I just needed to talk to you, and I was like, at least I had the courage to do that, because I just trusted you'd be open to that, and I just said, just having these dark thoughts, and I just can't understand it. And I know, but I think the difference now from when I used to have, say, negative thoughts and stuff, I had no self-compassion years ago. I was like you, I'd train harder, work harder, and I'll finally get through it, or whatever it is, and maybe I achieve more, I'll feel better, but that never worked. But now I have a lot of self-compassion when I'm going through those darker moments, and we've just moved into, like, the winter period, so I think dark stuff is coming up for a lot of people, and definitely came up for me, and I kind of feel like I'm coming through the other side of a lot of it now, but I'm sure I'll go back into it, like, it's a cycle, as Darryl said earlier. But what I was getting at was, I can't remember what I was getting at, but it's reminding, for me, the kind of message I want to share at the minute is reminding people that we're not our thoughts, we're not the dark thoughts that we have, we all have those, and it's reminding yourself that you're the watcher, and I think that's where the compassion comes from, because I know that's not me, that's just my ego, or whatever you want to call it, and I've compassion for my soul piece that's watching that.
Yes, I think you have it absolutely, and like, we've up to 80,000 thoughts a day, they say. So if you think out of 80,000 thoughts you have a day, do you think everyone is going to be saying you're amazing, you're incredible, you're beautiful, you're living the best life? Of course they're not. You're going to get some mad ones, you're going to get some daft ones, but you are not your thoughts, you're not your body. And again, coming back to society, we've built the whole society around physical things, and we look at people as a physical body. So now I'm looking at Darryl, now I'm looking at Cormac, but I'm not looking at Darryl. I'm not looking at Cormac. Lovely hairstyles anyway. But I'm not looking at Darryl, I'm not looking at Cormac. I'm looking at the physical body of Darryl and Cormac, but that is not you. You are not your body. You are not your thoughts. You're not even your brain. Your mind is not in the brain. The mind is outside of the brain. And I say that, people say, Dan, you're daft, would you shut up? Like, I'm like, well, when you have a thought and you think of, Jesus, why am I thinking that? Where is that coming from?
Yeah.
So the thought's coming from somewhere, but then there's another part of you that's thinking of that thought coming from somewhere. So you're not in your body. You're not in your brain. Your physical reality is being presented in that way. But we build up our whole life based on the physical thing. Our body, our blood pressure, our heart rate, our house, our paycheck. We build up everything, our self-worth and quote-unquote success built on everything physical. And even when you think about, like, if you ever go into a wake at a funeral, if you go into that room and the coffin is there and the body is there, that body is dead. There's no blood running in through that body. There's no heartbeat in that body. But you can still feel something. When you go up to that coffin or that body, maybe it's a loved one you had before, the body is there, but there's nothing there in the body. But there's still some energy, some presence, something that you can feel. What is that? It's the soul. And the soul never dies and the soul never goes. And Deepak Chopra says that at the end we come to a new beginning. We never really die. And I think from kind of where I'm coming from, as you were saying there, Cormac, we're not our thoughts. We're not our physical reality. Everything we experience in this world has actually nothing to do with the physical reality. Me, Cormac and Daryl could be standing at the side of a beach. We could be looking at the exact same view, but we're experiencing it completely differently. Completely different. I could be looking out and saying, Jesus, I wonder how far that ocean stretches. Jesus, that's massive. Daryl could be saying, fuck, the weather's shite today. Cormac could be like, geez, I wonder what it's like to be working that fishing boat. And I might not even see the fishing boat because I'm not interested in fishing boats. Daryl might be just seeing the weather because he's interested in weather. I might be seeing how far the sea goes because I'm interested in the sea and in the world or whatever. Everything we experience in life has nothing to do with the outside but everything to do with the inside. So what am I coming at from here? We're not our thoughts. We're not our physical body. We're a soul, and as Deepak says, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And what does that mean in English? It means that you can go out throughout the whole day and it doesn't really matter if, geez, you're a bit overweight. It doesn't really matter if your shoes aren't brand new. It doesn't really matter if your car looks like it's about to fall apart. It doesn't really matter if you've 10 bedrooms or 1 bedroom. None of that really matters. But what really matters is your soul. And when I say soul, it's your identity, who you see yourself as you really are. And ultimately from that is everything that you'll start experiencing in life. And I suppose a great way to give an example of this is that when me and Gráinne were looking for our first home, my one dream was always to live on the seafront. And I always said I wouldn't settle anything less without living either on the seafront or by the sea. And when we went to go look for our first place, we seen this first place and it was pretty much on the seafront. It was in budget. Everything looked great, everything looked perfect. And I built this up saying, oh great, we have our first house, brilliant, we're going to move in. 3 days later the landlord calls and says, sorry Dan, you didn't make it, we picked someone else. Then I started to go straight in to the ego saying, what do you mean it wasn't right? And I started to get frustrated. I said, oh sure, we're not going to find a house now, we're not going to get anywhere, we're not going to ever find a place at all. And for 4 weeks we couldn't find anything then. Nothing came up. And one day I was sitting beside the beach on a walk and just sat down for about 5-10 minutes. And this just came in from somewhere. And a lot of this comes in when we give ourselves that time and space. But this came in from somewhere, say, if you want to live on the sea, live like you're already living on the sea. If you want to have a house in the sea, live like you're already in it. And if you ever research someone called Joe Dispenza, he does a lot of this work, is that if I am someone that really wants to live a life of compassion, of ease, of joy, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I have to realise that I already have it. because again, come back to the old Dan when he put it into the future, saying when I get to the body position, when I get to the job, when I get to this, when I get to that, that's when it'll fall into place. It never really comes. Or it does come, but then you end up chasing something else and then chasing something else, and then it gets exhausting. So as Dispenza says, we need to live like we're already experiencing it right now. So every morning I woke up then, did meditation. I used to visualise myself sitting at home with a lovely warm cup of tea, looking out at the ocean and just seeing it. And I did it every single morning for 2 weeks consistently, every single morning. And I allowed myself to feel, what would it feel like living on the sea? I'd hear the waves crashing, I'd see the sun rise, I'd see people screaming as they got into the cold water in the sea, and experience every emotion that came with that when I was doing that visualization. After 2 weeks, this one client who was supposed to work with me a year ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, suddenly arrived into the gym I used to work in. I said, Dan, I have to talk to you. I said, look, I can't talk to you. I have a client right now. Buzzer goes off on the phone. Client I was supposed to have cancels. Can't make it, Dan, sorry. So I was like, look, you're in luck. I can take you. So I sat down, had a chat, and classic Irish question, how are you getting on? I was like, not too bad. Classic Irish answer when things can be even falling all down. Not too bad. Well, myself and Granny are looking for a place at the moment. She's like, oh, no way, what are you looking for? I was like, we're looking for somewhere. I'm being a bit awkward, but I'm holding myself to it. We're looking for somewhere on the sea. It has to be in Meath because for work, so it can only be Bettystown or Laytown.
Sound like me.
Like it's the only place I'll settle for. She said, no way, you actually looking for somewhere there? I was like, yeah. I was like, we've been looking for a while, but I know we'll find exactly when we're meant to. She's like, you're right, you will. I was like, why? We've a place. I was like, what? We've a place. I was like, what do you mean we've a place? Like, we've a place in Bettystown. I was like, no way. And in my head, I was like, jeez, what's this going to be like? Is it going to be a shed or something like this? And I was like, what's it like? And she goes, well, do you know the Neptune building? And my heart just dropped. 3 years ago, me and Granny were walking on the beach. Granny pointed up the apartment saying, would it be unbelievable to live up there? I was like, it will be. And we will live in there. And they're like, no, we won't. I was like, I promise you we will. And it was that exact same apartment that we looked up to that day 3 years ago that she had waiting to rent. And then we got it. So what am I trying to say here? I'm saying that a lot of what we experience in life and not what will come to us in life is not through luck. It's not through by chance. It's by what we create. It's by what we focus on. It's by what we put our intentions into. And for me, back then I thought I wouldn't even be able to afford a house in the sea, but I did. I was able to. Things came into my life, opportunities came, and all these things arrived because I allowed them to arrive. I believed they would arrive. And ultimately, whatever we believe in and who we are and what we're entitled to and what we can be is everything that we'll experience. And we experience the world not as it is, but as we are. And I think the more we can start really coming back to that is the more these magical things and magical experiences can happen. And when I say that, of course, moments like that where you move in your first day is a real magical experience and memory you'll always have. But to find the magic in every single day. Can I find the magic in this lovely cup of tea that Cormac made me about 20 minutes ago? It's gone half cold at the moment. But you know what? I'm still enjoying this. Exactly. But I'm still enjoying this cup of tea. Can I see someone like I see him for the first time with no labels, with no judgments, with nothing? Just see them exactly as they are. If you want to know how to be really happy, and if you have kids, they're only people you need to go to. Kids forgive instantly. Kids don't hold on to stuff instantly. When they're between that age of 5, 6 or 7, they're joyful, they're in the moment, they're playing, they find joy. If you give them a tractor, they'll find 10 hours of amusement out of that tractor. As we start to get older, we start to form all these beliefs and stuff, and whether it's from family or society or friends or whatever, we start to form all this stuff. And if you really want to be happy, just look at your kids, follow them, look at what they do. And that's, I think, they're the people that really find that joy. It is joy when you find a new beautiful house, a new beautiful home, but joy is enjoying that cup of tea. Joy is having that real conversation. Joy is being grateful and appreciating for what you have right now, not what you want down the line. And when you can live in that right now, that's where it'll just all start to flow.
I think what you said there, the gratitude, it's just massive, and it's something that I was dipping in and out of a lot. I have my morning practices or my daily practices that I always do, but the gratitude thing was something I'd bring in and let go. I wouldn't intentionally, I'd just forget about it.
Exactly like this.
But now, for the last number of weeks, if not months, I've been writing every morning just 3 to 5 things. I don't force it, 3 to 5 things, but also why I'm grateful for them.
Yeah.
And sitting with them for a moment, not just like say family. I won't just write family. I'll say
then got off giving out about why
I write why I'm grateful. Why I'm grateful, but it's I think it's massive to
so much.
The one thing I've really noticed from keeping that gratitude practice and all the daily practices I do is no matter, like, the things that used to get me frustrated, say with myself and Cormac, if we get some bad news, right? It's like something, we haven't gotten any terrible news, but something like is like maybe not worked out that we've tried.
Exactly.
Okay, we've had a few. They don't get to me. Like, in the way I'm like, I've such belief that it happened for a reason. And it just doesn't, like, there's not many things now. Maybe in the moment I might get a bit emotional about things. There's not many things that when I have 5 minutes to think about them can drag me down. There genuinely is, no matter how bad they are, which is, and I do think that's coming from those gratitude practices. I do. And like, if there is anyone listening, it's a very quick thing that you can do in the morning, but it's not about like what I used to do at the start, writing things down quickly, like 10 things real quick. 3 or 5, but actually why you're grateful for them and sitting and feeling them.
Feel it.
Like, try and feel the appreciation.
I think that's the most important there. Because as you mentioned, like, I've been guilty of it myself, like sitting there in the morning, taking out the journal, writing down, I'm really grateful for this beautiful home. Then I get up and say, why wasn't the floor swept last night? It's a mess. That's not gratitude. Like, we see it so many times, and people with to-do lists and say, just tick it off. You can tick off all you want, but we actually in what you're actually doing. What do I mean by that? A conversation I had with a client the other day that he had to make a really tough decision in terms of ending a relationship, moving back, finding a new home. And a lot of the doubt and worry and fear from all this was coming from with his kids. And he's like, but what if they think I'm not a good dad? What if they hate me? What if they'll never forgive me for leaving her? I was like, what if they do? I said to him, when you go home and when you're in that environment where you know your heart isn't really connected, you know you really don't want to be there, and you know there's another part of that, your soul is saying, I need you to move out, I need a new home. When you're in that, are you fully present? Are you fully with your kids in that moment? Or is your physical body, coming back to the soul again from earlier, is your physical body there, but your mind and your heart somewhere else? He says it's somewhere else. So I was like, if you move out, if you move to that new home, what will it be like when your kids come over then? It can be amazing. Why? Because I can be able to actually be there with them. I can be the real person I really want to be. I can be full of joy and fun, whereas now I just find I'm just so much in my head. I can't be fully with them. I was like, what are you waiting for then? So I think it's that exact same thing as when we can have something like a gratitude list or something, can I actually feel it? Can I actually be in it? And I think that's where the real magic from it comes. Like, we all can at times get caught up in to-do lists and getting things done and getting things ticked off, but it's like people who go to a concert. They're at a concert and there's amazing people playing in front of them, and they're recording the whole fucking thing in the phone. You're not in the concert, you're in the phone.
And I'm always thinking, when are they going to even watch that?
Exactly, you know. It's mad, like, they're in the phone. And what's the reason for taking the video? Like, just so I can show someone. What's the reason for showing someone? So I can show them I was at a concert. Why do you need to show them you're at the concert? Because it looked good. And it's a great thing that people always say. Clients come to me at times and say, I just need to stop comparing myself. I just need to stop judging myself. I just need to stop trying to impress people. I say, ask yourself a better question. What's your need to judge yourself? What's your need do you find to compare yourself? And what's your need that you feel you need to impress people? And I think it's come back to that same thing we chatted about earlier on, is getting beyond them negative thoughts or getting beyond. It's like, how could I describe it? It's nearly like a triangle. Like if we look at a triangle that has like different layers to it, at the top could be comparing ourselves, and most people would stop there. They'd look at the top of the triangle and say, I just need to stop comparing myself, and they'll go off it. But then the next day they'll caught in the same thing, and the next day they'll be caught in the same thing, and it's all well and good catching ourselves in these moments, which is really important. We need to catch ourselves. We need to be aware of it. But if we're not going to the bottom of the triangle and saying, well, where is this need coming from for me to keep comparing myself? We'll spend our whole lives in that same place. Comparing ourselves into someone else or something different, or judging ourselves in some area and then transfers into another area, until we get to the core of it, which is the belief. We'll always stay in that space all the time. And coming back to the gratitude thing, what's my ultimate belief behind them place of gratitude as well? Where can I see these puzzles and these patterns that start to create, and can I start to really understand that? And Louise Hay is another really incredible person that talks all about affirmations and how important affirmations are, and affirmations aren't these wishy-washy things plucked out of the sky. There's real science behind it from the neuroscience perspective, and it's amazing when we can really actually start to again get beyond the top of the triangle and go to the bottom of the triangle. That's when we really get that real transformative change. And I'm not sitting here saying this is easy work to do. It will, if this is someone right now listening to this starting that kind of journey, it will be probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, but I can promise you it'll be one of the most freeing things you'll also do as well.
And if anyone is starting that kind of journey, say whatever you want to call it, getting back to themselves, be kind to yourself when like what you were saying, Cormac, like, and I get it as well, you might get thoughts in your head and you're like, how am I thinking this now after all the work I've done? And you start getting angry, but that's where you need to be kind and compassionate. And coming back to you're not your thoughts, chatting with a guy the other day, he told me, what he was saying to me about those thoughts and those things that go on inside our minds. It's like you were saying, you are not your thoughts, because the two things he said you don't want to do, you don't want to try fix them, because you can't. Exactly. It's crazy what goes on in there, much more complicated than we can ever comprehend. So do not try to fix that, because you're going to lose. And don't try to quieten them. No. Don't try to. A lot of people try to quieten them down. Don't try to quieten them. Let them come up. What you want to do is observe them. That's the beauty. Don't judge them. Just observe them. From a different perspective. He gave me a good analogy, sort of. He was like, if you're walking down the street and you might see someone who is what society would call crazy. Okay, so they're shouting and saying all these random words that don't even make sense. He goes, what would your mind be like if someone had a microphone to it? Jesus, and everything that was coming out of your head, like that goes on in your head during the day, people think you're crazy. It's just that them people aren't keeping it quiet. They're letting out. And everybody's mind is like that. So it's not about trying to quieten it. It's not about trying to fix it. It's about trying to observe it and see where they're coming from, maybe, and letting them flow through.
It's like sitting back in the seat of awareness and like, it's like, wait, I can step back a bit and watch this movie that's going on, because it is really a movie that we're creating of our own lives. Like, go back to what you said about being on the beach. Like, we're all creating a story based on our past beliefs, based on, you know, our interests, our fears, conditioning, exactly, all of our past traumas, whatever it is. Like, it's, and we're all creating this story, and it's important to remember that you have the choice to change it. Like what you were saying with Joe Dispenza's visualization, like visualizing that future, not being in the future, but having it now. And I used to do that every morning. Remember, I used to stand out there with my arms out and visualizing, like, actually start with gratitude for everything I had in my life, and then I brought that feeling into everything I have in my future. And I say have as if I already have it, because it's already my mind. Like, Wolf Academy building exists. Like, we talk about it as if it's a real place, because it is. It's already been created in our minds, so it's already there. And I think when you just kind of start living into that assurance of, like, your future looking like whatever it is you'd like it to look like, that's a great practice. And it's also remembering not to attach yourself to the achievement of that goal. That's the hard part too, because I used to, like, you know, visualizing this future, like, I have to get there now, but it's like,
and then the ego comes in,
and then it's like, oh, I'm not there yet, but it's visualizing it, and then just letting go of that and trusting that you'll get there, kind of like what you did with the apartment. You visualize, you said, no, we're going to have that, like, just certainty, so you don't have to worry about it, because you know it's on your path.
And you need to, like, with that there, some people get the wrong impression that they think about it and just think it's going to happen for them. Whereas you do have to break it down. What can you do each day to get you towards that goal? Make your end goal as dreamy or as lavish as you want, but you need to break it down as well into what you can do each day to get towards there. But it's just constantly having that vision, you know, because things won't always, the road will be bumpy, and as Cormac always says, it's having that vision for yourself or for what you want for your life in the future that will get you through those bumps, get you over that hill, you know. It's having that vision there. But,
one thing I was actually wanted to ask you, what's stopping people from looking into themselves and trying to connect with themselves and having that awareness? Like, they're not happy, but they don't want to do that.
I think Darryl summed up, it's fear. I think comfortable, you can comfortable, and there's even something, I was only talking to someone yesterday, like, I think it's fear. I was going to say fear and ego, but that's the exact same thing, because ego is fear. And when I say ego, if someone doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about, there's a part of us that has an ego, and the ego tries to trap us in the safe, the comfortable, the familiar, in terms of what we've always known. And anytime we step outside of that ego, it's like that's when you start to get nervous. Your hands might start to shake, say, oh, I don't know about this, and that's where sometimes you get these racing thoughts. And when we talk about that, some people still talking about comfort zones. Oh, you're in your comfort zone, get out of your comfort zone. It's getting out of your ego. And I think that's where most people get caught, is they allow their ego to overtake their true self. And that fragile ego wants to trap them, it wants to stay there. If someone genuinely isn't being happy in, let's say it's a relationship, the fragile ego might trap them into saying, well, don't go talk about that to someone, because if you leave this person, well, then you might be left with no one. Or I might say, well, don't leave that person, because that happened to your mum or dad before, so that could happen to you again. Again, coming back to past traumas or family. So I think why we don't is because of fear. And the great thing to always know is whatever energy we admit ourselves is the more of energy we'll put into society. And there's a fella I go to called Ravi, and he's a genius. But
it's the guy.
It's the guy.
Don't share the secrets.
Oh, hold on, cut that bit out. But as he said, the more of what we put in society is the more of what we can change in the society. But the more of what we put in society, it starts with us. And what do I mean by that? Like, there's a lot of fear now, and particularly men as well, that I shouldn't talk about it, shouldn't be open, put the head down, drive on, and we use the classic words, grand. How are you getting on? Grand. When really the building could be on fire. And I think a lot of that comes down from fear. Fear because, well, not many people do it. Not many people are open. Not many people are honest. Not many people are willing to go ask them deeper and bigger questions. And because it's not really the norm. The norm is to go down to get up, have your cup of coffee in the morning, get to work, drive to work, get there really quick, do your 9 to 5, get home, go to the gym or do something and go to sleep that night and repeat the same thing 5 days a week. But often people aren't willing to stop and ask them bigger questions. Is this even the job I want to go into? And where the fear comes in, anything that comes us outside of what's comfortable, familiar, if we have to go outside of that job and suddenly we're not getting that paycheck in every week, or suddenly we're not going to know where we'll have a pension, the ego comes up and says, oh, stay where you are, don't go there, you have your paycheck, you have that. Or the ego might say, oh, don't leave that relationship, you'll be left with no one, you'll be stuck on your own, you won't be happy. That's all ego. And I think what we need to do in them moments, in terms of how can I start to really be more open or be more honest with myself, because I find it really hard, and you will find it really hard. But I think it's to know and ask that question, if I truly love myself, what would I do? If I really love myself, what would I do? If I knew I only had 2 weeks left to live, what would I do? It's a great question to ask.
It is, yeah.
And I think when we can ask that question, if I truly love myself, what would I do? Suddenly we would say, do you know what, I actually wouldn't stay in this relationship. I actually wouldn't stay in this job. I actually wouldn't beat myself up all the time. I actually wouldn't put all this pressure on myself. And I think that's when we can establish between, right, is this genuine real fear to actually have, or is this just my ego trying to trap me in the safe and familiar? Kind of like jumping off into the water, into the sea, off a ledge or something. The longer you stand on that ledge looking into the sea, is the more stories you start to create, saying, oh God, what if it's really cold? What if I hit the bottom? What if I break my legs? Just what if we're able to do it? And like a lot of our own fears, we've seen so many people overcome the same thing. It's like watching someone who just jumped in off the same ledge into the sea, and they're there cheering and jeez, that was great. But when it comes to us, we can allow that fear to overconsume us. And I think that's what we need to do, is ask that question, if I truly love myself, what would I do? Because then we can establish whether this is genuine, real fear to be cautious about, or whether that's just my ego trapping me in here right now. And I think within that as well is that if it's coming from that place of really from the heart, from the soul, from really loving yourself, when you go to make that decision, it is going to feel the hardest thing you'll do. It is going to feel massive. But on the other side of that is freedom you'll probably never have ever experienced before. And I think it's to know that, to be, as not get attached to it, but to know that on the other side of fear is always freedom. And to really have that awareness. And when we start to really make them decisions from love, our awareness then starts to grow, and we're able to see more stuff, more patterns. And as I was only thinking to myself driving over here on the way over, like, it's all well and good meditating and journaling and practicing mindfulness and all these things, but unless we're willing to now start make decisions and actions that are in line, that's trapping us in this way that we don't want to live, the way we don't want to feel, we're never going to get that awareness. Never. Or if we're not experiencing or putting ourselves into these environments that shape that, we're never going to get that awareness. If I am someone who wants to now be happier and healthier, and every day I go into work they're all complaining about the weather, not being paid enough, COVID's coming, Jesus, we're all going to be locked up. Well, of course, how am I going to be happy? That environment is suffocating me. And I think that's really what it is placing ourselves in them environments and knowing that always on the other side of fear is always freedom, no matter what it is.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, I think, because for me it's like this urge to like help people just push past that fear, because it's like they don't know what's on the other side. People who are living in that, you know, it's like you can live the life you want to live, free of whatever, like free to be who you are and do what you want to do. And it's, you know, it's like you're telling them like it's grand, just jump past the fear, but you know yourself how hard it was for you to get past that fear.
Huge.
So it does take a lot of courage.
Massive.
So it's like for me, courage and compassion, those two things, to go on that journey of connecting to yourself
and know that it's all your responsibility to do it.
And like no one can change your life apart from you. You can look for people for help,
Guides
they guide you on the path, they point the way, but you have to take the step, and it is hard for people. So I think like when I kind of like started stepping into that myself and like creating my own life on my own terms, like trying to be true to myself, follow my heart, like you said, I was kind of like, come on everyone, like why aren't you all doing this? But I forgot how long it took me to do
in
that.
that space, like.
It's easy to say after crossing,
exactly,
after jumping into the water, it's easy to say come on in, it's easy, but for the ones standing up on the ledge, you forget that fears can be gripping. So it's just reminding people that it is nice in that water if you want to jump, and to be the guide if they need assistance or whatever, you can be there
exactly.
But they need to do the work, and you're always there if they need you, and they have to ask for the help.
Exactly. And I think there's 2 points on that I want to say is, and the first one with fear is an emotion, and fear is like any emotion, it has a chemical release towards it. And there's a term that I always use with clients, is that emotion is energy in motion. So the more we can start to move, the more we can start to breathe, the more we can start to get into nature, the more we can start to do these physical things, is the more we can start to change our emotional state. Because if I'm someone who is feeling fear and I don't really want to make them decisions, but I'm not really exercising, not really getting out into nature, I'm not really breathing, I'm not really doing these things, I'm trapped in that chemical response. And cortisol is just trapped me in that, adrenaline's trapped me in that, I'm stuck in that bubble, I can't get beyond it. And you can't outthink yourself out of fear. It's impossible. No way. Because them chemicals are flooding through your system. It's like trying to put out a fire and you're putting more petrol on, you're getting frustrated. Why isn't the fire going down? You're putting more onto it. Like it's like when you have a thought and you say, oh, why am I thinking like that? I shouldn't be thinking like this. I'm fucking going like that. You're fueling that even more. So emotion is energy in motion. So if I am someone who is in that fear state, that fear place, I need to have these things that allow me to move it out of my body. For me, it's sea swimming, it's exercise, it's getting into nature, it's boxing, it's all these areas. And that's why I do a lot of work that I do with clients now, because we need to release that, we need to hold on to that. And I think it's really important in terms of that with emotion, is to know that we have to have these practices in place that allow us to overcome that fear. Because if I'm on the ledge and I'm trying to outthink myself out of the ledge, it's almost impossible. And the second part you both touched on is knowing that it always comes down to us. It is always us. No one can fix you. No one can heal you. No one can change you. No one can transform you. No one can. And one of the hardest things I realised was that all of my suffering is from me. Everything. And people say, oh, well, I had a bad childhood. And I didn't have a bad childhood, but some people might say, I had a bad childhood. You might have had a bad childhood, but the experience you had is still you. It's still you now creating that suffering. And that could be from 15 years ago, and I know that could be hard, but still from you. You're like, but it's just my job. It's not the job, it's you. But it's just not the right place, me. It might not be the right place, but it's still you who's been in that place. But jeez, you know what, they just do my head in. Well, it's still you who's going to see them each time. Everything comes back to you. And when you know that and understand it, it's hard to know, number one. But number two, it's actually quite freeing as well. Because now you're not getting caught into external things having to change so you can be happy or you can be at peace. Now you know that it can just be you. And it's amazing when you start to get into that space. It's like you're sitting down. Sometimes I'm sitting down with people and they could be talking about something, and I'm like, I'm just not emotionally being charged in by that. It's like I'm sitting down, as we spoke about earlier. It's that seat of awareness, that level of awareness where, as I say, it's like nearly like you're watching yourself on the TV. You're watching yourself, you're sitting down on the couch and you're watching yourself on the TV going by about your life. And that's the level of awareness when we can start to really bring that in. That's when we don't get emotionally charged, and that's when we can start to make better decisions. Know that, but you know what, it's not the job, it's just me who's choosing to go into this job. It's not the food I'm eating, it's me deciding to cook that food and me deciding not to go experience what is a better version of that. I think that's the freeing bit as well.
Yeah, some people think when you tell them that everything is down to them, like how they feel about things.
Yeah.
It might sound harsh.
It is, yeah.
It might sound harsh to say to someone who has been abused, maybe.
Of course.
That it's their responsibility to react whatever way.
Yeah.
It is hard to understand that, and you're going to have the pain from it.
Absolutely.
But I think when you realise that it is your responsibility to feel how you feel, no matter the situation, no matter what the situation is, you actually have the control to change it.
I think Sadhguru puts it well. I think it was him that said it. It's like, it's not your fault, but everything is your responsibility.
Yeah.
The word itself
it's a
means
beautiful way of summing it up.
Your ability to respond.
Yeah.
And even if you choose to do nothing, that's still a response. You can choose to, like, I'm not going to react. I'm not going to change my life. That's your response that you've chosen.
Yeah.
So you're always choosing responses.
Yeah.
You're always responding to things, and it's just reminding yourself. And personally, at the start, I think, it's overwhelming to think that, and it's like, fuck, I don't want this responsibility. It is power.
Yeah.
But now I feel it when I remind myself, wait, actually, you are in control of everything. Sometimes you feel like, I have to do, when I say, like, I have to do these things, and then I remind myself, like, oh, you don't have to do that. You can just sit here for the day in your room if you really want to.
Yeah.
You have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
And there might be big consequences, but you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. And just reminding myself of that, it's like, fuck I am in control of my life every day. And I just think that's a real power, and a lot of people are probably afraid of that responsibility at the start, but once you get used to it, it's so freeing, as you said.
It is, and it's even that word, have to. Every time I say have to is every time I'm just living by my ego. Oh, I have to get up here in the morning. Oh, I have to do this training session. Oh, I have to go here later on during the week. And that's all ego. And it's even catching. So sometimes I say, I come home to grind and say, oh, I have to get up early in the morning. But you're the one who made the decision to do this job, Dan. And the part of me wants to get angry and take it, shut up, will you? But she's right, like, And it's even changed that word have to, and I get to.
Yes.
Today I get to train. Today I get to go to a job. Today I get to do all these things. And it's even catching yourself each moment saying, take it out of your language. The word have to does not exist anymore.
And should. Should.
Have to or should. I should do that.
I always try to change the should. I still say it, but I catch myself every time. Even when I'm writing in my journal, if I'm writing should, and I cross it out. And if I can't write the word I want, I don't write it then, because I obviously don't want to do it. And it's only someone else telling me.
It's a human ego again. Yeah. And it is so powerful. And, like, sometimes I describe to clients in a way, they come in and they'd say, I did this one session, they all came in, and when you come in and there's just the energy's quite low on one day. Like, it could be in anything, could be in work, it could be in a family at home or whatever. And people are coming in, it was rain outside, the whole shebang was coming in saying, oh jeez, bad weather outside, isn't it? And then I was like, oh god. The next person comes in, jeez, trench rain out there, isn't it? And the next person comes in saying, oh, I had to drop the kids off there. Every person was coming in, it was like a conveyor belt like this. And usually at the start of a session I'd have with clients, we do maybe a little bit of movement, mobility, or a breath work or something. And I said, hold on there 5 minutes. So I walked out of the room and got my laptop. I walked back into the room and got hooked the laptop up to the projector screen I had in the studio. And I put up a photo on the screen. And I said, how many people woke up this morning and said, I have to train? How many people said, oh, I have to walk the kids to school? Because most of them are coming in with that. And all the hands went up. I was like, oh yeah, I had to get in here today. Oh, I know I just have to be here. And I put up a photo of someone in a wheelchair. And I said, if I was in a wheelchair, and if you were coming into me here today, would you say, I have to train today? I have to be here today? No, I wouldn't. Why? Because I know that I'm lucky today that I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not saying it's bad in a wheelchair, but what I'm trying to explain is that sometimes we get stuck in this, I have to do this. But if we seen someone there that suddenly who would love to be able to run, who would love to be able to jump, who would live to be able to swim one more time.
Or to bring their kids somewhere.
You wouldn't be saying that. It's like walking by the street and you see you're complaining about, oh, I have to get back here to work, saying, oh, I have to go out and get me lunch here, and suddenly you walk by someone who's sitting on the street homeless. Suddenly you're not complaining about, you have to go here, you have to do that.
It's a make dinner.
It's a make, but why do we have to wait? Why do we have to wait for someone else to bring that inside of us? Why do we have to wait to compare our life to someone else's? We can't. We can, but we'll never come to that place of inner peace, inner bliss, or inner joy. But when we start to cultivate that and say, every day I get to be here. And like, when we look at it, I think the chances of you being born is like 1 in 300 trillion. When you actually think of that for a second, like, and even think of all the things that had to happen for you to be even born.
I don't even like doing it.
It's insane.
So in your head. Yeah.
It's insane. And yet so often we get caught up into so much small things and we miss the miracle, we miss the gift, which is us. Because someone once said that there's something missing here in this world and I need you in here to be this. And that's why we need people who love to dance. We need people who love to sing. We need people who went through that in school, and we need them to come back into these schools. We need all these people to be who they really are, because that is why they are actually really here. And that's the miracle, that's the gift. And that's when we get out of the have to, and that's where we get into I get to.
Wow.
Nice.
It's powerful.
It's gratitude again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, it's just a question that I usually ask people. What's your definition of success?
Great question. Freedom. That's all it is.
Great answer.
Just freedom.
Shortest answer we've had.
Yeah.
I was expecting.
No, I think it's just freedom.
Yeah.
I think as a society, if you had to ask society overall, people would say, oh, a lovely big house, a lovely new car, all these physical things. But I think it's just freedom. And what do I mean when I say freedom? I think when I say freedom, I think it's the freedom to wake up every single day and knowing you're exactly who you're meant to be, being in the exact place you're meant to be, doing exact things that you're meant to be doing. And I think that's what freedom is. It's this space where you have in your mind that everything's just, it's at like a slower pace. It's like you're watching the world and you're just looking at it from a different lens. Like, I think that's what success ultimately is, and I think that can only come from inside of us. And that's why when I work with a lot of people, I say everything you do is not just for you. And there's a quote I live by, is what I do for myself, I do for others, and what I do for others, I do for myself. And what I mean by that, I mean by you taking on this journey, by you taking on this experience to understand who you are, what you really want, and what's the life you really want to create. You start to give that permission to give that to others. And the more you can start to do that, is the more, again, from earlier on, that energy is now starting to be emitted more into the environment, into everywhere that we go, everywhere that we are. And the more we can start to bring that in, Jesus, what a world to live in that would be. Like John Lennon used to always talk about. And I think that's what success really is. It's that inner sense of freedom. You're not being attached to things. You're not carrying all them past traumas. You're not relying your self-worth or your success, quote unquote, on something down the line or something in the future or some external thing. It's the freedom to know that you're exactly who you're meant to be right now, in the exact place where you're meant to be right now, doing and being with the exact people you're meant to be with. And I think what comes into that really is love. Living from the heart, living from the soul. No matter how big it is, no matter how hard the conversation might be, I think that's what it is. Freedom is love, and I think it's to live by them emotions. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, brilliant answer. Yeah, love that.
So then there's one other question that we ask, and that's, what advice would you give to your younger self? And before I let you answer that question, the last few times I've asked it, I'm thinking this is more relevant, I suppose. It's what anyone else younger now possibly listen to this, what advice you give to them.
Yeah.
Because I suppose maybe I'm thinking of the question a bit wrong, but in my head you wouldn't want to give the advice to your younger self, because you wouldn't be sitting
Who
here
you
doing
are
this
today.
now. You wouldn't be who you are today.
Exactly,
but
yeah.
I suppose it's more for anyone else that's maybe struggling.
Yeah.
What advice would you give?
It's a great question. There's so much I could give, and I think it's a great thing you said there, is that not never to give, but if you had given that advice to yourself, it wouldn't form the person who you are today. So we're made of our experiences. But if I had to look at someone else who maybe was in the same bubble as me and was growing up in the same bubble as me, going through the same stuff, if I really had to look at that person in the eyes and give them advice, I think it'd be 2 words: free and believe. And I think they're the main 2 things I tell them. And what do I mean by that? I think the first one with free would be to tell them that you are free to do anything you want to do. You're free to go to the space, you're free to go to space. If you're free to live in a desert island and play guitar and surf all day, you're free to do that. You are free to do anything you want to do. And I think the second one is believe. Believe that you can do it. And the reason why I say that, I think a lot of my own life I spent growing up, and like I mentioned earlier, when I was in school, whether I was Irish and not doing Irish and all these other things, I never had that belief. I never had that. And if people knew me growing up, might not think that at all, but that's where we put on the mask. But I think it's to have that belief that you can, and I'm not saying this as a wishy-washy statement, I'm really being genuine, that you can do and be anything that you really want to be, and to allow yourself to have that freedom to dream, freedom to be expansive, freedom to do whatever the hell it is. And I'm not saying to go over and be the next Michael D. Higgins. That can be as simple as going every Saturday evening to play in your local club and play guitar and sing because it's really in your heart and you really want to do it. Success isn't something that is this big, massive thing. Success is freedom. It's freedom doing what you want, being who you want, and knowing that you're doing that each and every day. And I think it's a lifelong journey, it's a lifelong commitment, but that's why you need to enjoy the journey of it as well. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dan. And
cheers, Dan.
If anyone was looking to reach out to you
Yes.
for more information on what you do, anything like that, how would they find you?
Yeah, so website is danglingcoaching.ie, and Instagram and Facebook is pretty much the same thing. I have a podcast as well, which is called Broaden the Horizon. So it's like me, look, when I'm looking out to sea, I'm always thinking what's beyond that horizon, and that's the name for it. So that's where they can reach out or see more stuff that I do. And yeah, any questions, feel free to send them in. Thanks for having me on, men. Great to see you as always. Great to be in your company as always. And
plenty of wisdom in that one there, so it's
well,
great to listen to.
Great to be here. Thank
Cheers,
you.
Dan.
Cheers, Dan.